Meeting is called to order at 6 o'clock. You don't need to rise, but put your hand over your heart for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United
of the
States
United States of America,
and to the republic
for which it
to stand one nation
under
under God, indivisible,
with liberty
liberty and justice for all.
for all.
All right, thank you. We are being live, broadcast live on our YouTube channel, and we are recorded and broadcast over Buren Television Channel 12. I'm not sure that's live though. Clerk Wright, could you please call the roll?
Oh, yes. Trustee Fraser,
Here,
Trustee Martin,
Here.
Trustee Miller,
Here.
Trustee White, not on.
No, not yet.
Treasurer Bud,
Here.
Clerk is present. Supervisor Mackey,
Here.
we have a quorum.
Thank you. We'll begin with an executive summary. Today, we just have a few matters of business to attend to. As usual, we will be doing our consent agenda, where we pay all of our bills, our day-to-day bills. We then begin new business. The first is the rezoning of a residential piece of property that was built over 50, 60 years ago. Yeah, the house was along the way, somebody decided that that house was sitting on industrial property and zoned it that way. We're looking to right that wrong. We're then going to have a few discussions. The first one will be a discussion with Parks and Recreation. Basically, the 5W, what's open, when, what do people need to do, and why is it closed? Well, why is easy? COVID. The next update after that will be our Public Safety Department. We have a new current issue that we really need to discuss, something terribly wrong in this country. And we're going to talk about what our policies are and what we've done over the last few years to de-escalate. We'll hear a presentation by Plant Moran. It's a big time of the year. We go over the financial state of the township. We'll be doing the township audit of the year end 2019. In closing, I'm going to ask, I'm going to be seeking a revision to the initial agenda to add a new line item at the end of it regarding the cost to the township of the COVID issue. Okay, so I guess I'm going to start by saying, can somebody make an amendment? Can somebody make a motion to revise the agenda? Add
Supervisor. Supervisor.
Sure.
I make a motion that we,
Trustee Fraser.
I make a motion that we adopt the revised edition with the additional item of the COVID cost for tonight's meeting.
Thank you.
Support.
I have motion, I have support. I guess I got to go roll call each time, Clerk, right?
Yes.
Okay, Clerk, could you do the roll?
You say you got to do roll call each time.
Yes.
Trustee Martin,
Yes.
Trustee Miller,
Yes.
Trustee Fraser,
Yes.
Treasurer Bud.
Yes.
Is Trustee White on yet? Yes for me.
No.
Supervisor,
Yes.
motion passes.
Next is the consent agenda. Mr. Martin, did you do it last time?
No, I didn't, but I'd be happy to do it.
Please do that, Trustee Martin.
This is the consent agenda.
Correct, sir.
I make a motion that we adopt the consent agenda as presented. Item 1, board meeting minutes of June 2nd, 2020. Item 2, prepaid list of June 4th, 2020. Item 3, prepaid list of June 11, 2020. Item 4, voucher list of June 16, 2020.
Support.
I have a motion, I have support, consent agenda, so hearing no discussion. Clerk Wright, could you please call the roll?
Trustee Miller,
Yes.
Trustee Fraser,
Yes.
Trustee Martin,
Yes.
Treasurer Bud.
Yes.
Yes for me. Supervisor,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. We have no public hearing today. Next item is correspondence, announcements, and presentations. I do have one announcement that I want to make. And that is that the Eagle Creek has agreed to do a presentation in front of our Environmental Commission on June 17th. Eagle Creek operates the dam that creates Belleville Lake. We will be doing it virtually on Zoom. We will be opening it up for the public to watch that. June 17th, 7 p.m. Environmental Commission, Eagle Creek presentation on the dam. I have no other announcements that I wish to make. Well, I do have another one. Today, I went to Westland City Hall, where with a conference of Western Wayne sat with 17 other communities representing almost 750,000 people. And we agreed that we would do a listening tour. That listening, I've talked to Crane Conley. Crane Conley and I would like to do the listening tour with Belleville and Van Buren together. But a listening tour in conjunction with the Western Wayne NAACP, who is going to be active in helping us promote it so that we can hear our residents and hear their concerns. I have a feeling we're going to find that after 17 communities, we're going to pretty much hear a underlying issue that we need to think about, address. But as elected officials, it's our job to listen, and we're going to listen. That's the idea. So to let everybody know that we are trying to do something. We're trying to listen. There was a demonstration last week. Most of us were in attendance there. We did listen, and we're going to continue. We're going to try and make change.
Supervisor,
Trustee Martin.
is the Environmental Commission presentation going to be available to us, the board?
I don't know what you would like me to do, but I'll do whatever you want. But I could send it to you as a video, or you can watch it watch it with them.
Well, it's going to be a Zoom link, correct?
It is. The problem is the documentation that we aren't allowed to release that documentation. They might be able to.
Well, what are they presenting to the commission? I mean,
Sorry.
what's being presented to the commission?
It's a public meeting.
It is. Yeah. Hopefully they're going to be able to say what they can't give us in paperwork.
Oh, it's a public meeting. I thought you said it wasn't public. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. No, it is public and it will be on Zoom. And
Okay.
anybody listening can.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't do that right. Anybody else?
What
Yeah,
time was
Are we still on the announcements?
Yes, we are, sir.
I have a couple there.
Yes, you better.
Okay, I'd like to announce that Charter Township of Van Buren offices will be closed Friday, July 3rd, 2020, in observance of 4th of July holiday. Also, just some updates. Permanent AV list currently stands at 6,963, a little short of 7,000, which accounts for 29% of all registered voters in Van Buren Township, which is 23,670 at this date and time. As of Monday morning, we received 4,160 ballot requests for August primary, an average of 300 requests per day. The state of Michigan has begun to allow registered voters to request an absentee application through the state website, which is michiganvic.sos.state.mi.us. In addition, voters have the ability to track their absentee ballots application and the ballot through this website. So if you go to this website, which we have on our township website, you can track your absentee ballot application as well as the ballot once you receive it, to make sure that we have it. And if we don't have it, you can check on to see why we don't. But applications are coming in, and as you can see, in great demand. I think I'm pretty sure this is going to be a record turnout for a primary. It looks that way already. If everyone that's continue to send in their requests, we are over a month and a half out. So looks like gonna be a record turnout for a primary, so that's good news. So if you're out there and you're listening, if you want to vote and thinking about not wanting to come to the poll and put yourself at risk, you can always fill out an application. You should have one in your mailbox. If you don't, look for one. We show in our QBF that all Van Buren Township voters received an application. So you should have one in your mailbox or in your mail. That's it.
Okay, excellent. Anybody else would like to?
Supervisor question, what time was that environmental commission meeting?
June 17th at 7 p.m.
Thank you.
You're supposed to put that out on Facebook. Okay, hearing no further, is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak? Moderator?
At this time, I do not see any hands raised.
Okay, let me tell them what they can speak on because they may change their mind. They can speak on anything police matter wise, since we're going to be discussing police. Anything parks and recreation or zoning. Now do you see any hands?
Still no virtual hands raised at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. We're moving
No
on.
problem.
Okay. First order of business is to consider approval of a second reading of an ordinance to rezone a parcel of land. Can I have somebody read this off? Reggie, Trustee Miller?
I'm sorry, what was that again?
Oh, did you want to read off the approval for the rezoning the parcel of land?
Yeah.
For your
I
neighbor?
make a motion, discussion on and to consider approval of the second final reading of ordinance 6-2-20 (1) and 2 rezone parcel V -83-105 -99 -0035 known as 1043 Savage Road from M1 light industrial to R-1B single family residential.
Support.
Okay, I've got a motion for by Trustee Miller and supported by Treasurer Budd. Who's Dan Powers? Can you talk about this?
Good evening, Supervisor. This is Director Best.
Okay.
I will be speaking on the agenda item that you see before you today. This is to rezone a portion of the property of the Revises who are off of Savage Road at 1043 Savage Road from M1 light industrial to R1B single family
Yes.
residential.
Yes, I'm here.
Yep, just to interrupt really quickly, that is Trustee White on the phone, and now he is here, guys. Thank you.
This is the second reading of the ordinance to rezone the property. This is the document that you have before you that I'm showing, and it's not showing up very well. But if you look here at this area, the front of the parcel has the residence on it, the Revis's home, and the back end of the parcel is zoned M1. This was done back a long time ago when the area, that triangle area and adjacent to Belleville's industrial area was zoned industrial because the master plan was to promote industrial use in that area. It was thought at the time that the houses would eventually be sold and industry would take over that triangle section. Over time, that hasn't happened. And the 2008 downturn, mortgage companies changed their policies and split zone parcels such as this one that has half industrial, half residential are more difficult to get mortgages for, making them difficult to sell. The township board asked the planning department to offer rezoning for these parcels for free if they so chose, so that these parcels can be sold to the residents more easily and the new owners can get mortgages, or they can refinance, which is something that a lot of these homeowners want to do. There were a series of parcels, 6 properties that were rezoned. This is the last parcel that was in that request for rezoning. This is the second reading and would effectively turn the entire parcel from a split zone to residential. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I have no questions. That was well said. Basically, the guy bought property, somebody zoned it M1. I was difficult to get a mortgage. We're trying to fix that wrong. Trustee White,
Yes.
you have a question.
I'm somewhat familiar with this property. It's on the north side there, and I think this is proper because all of the adjoining residents, or most of them, are residential, and this I approve of applying this as residential instead of its current zoning of light industrial.
Okay. All right. Hearing no further comment, I have a motion by Trustee Miller. It's been supported by Treasurer Bud. Excuse me. Clerk Wright, could you please call the roll?
Trustee White,
Yes on new business item number 1.
Trustee Miller,
Yes.
Trustee Martin,
Yes.
Trustee Fraser,
Yes.
Treasury Bud,
Yes.
yes for me. Supervisor,
Yes.
motion passed.
Thank you,
Thank
board.
Next, we're going into something we don't require a vote, but it's an update for Parks and Recreation. Parks and Recreation, could you take the floor?
Jen Zenline is coming on right now, and Jen, you can unmute yourself.
All right.
You sure that's
And the
Jen?
video. Yes, and the video.
Hey.
Remember, I'm not in IT. Okay. Thank you. Can you guys see me?
Yep.
Neither are
Okay.
we.
Well, thank you for adding us to the agenda tonight. And so it's a great time to talk about Parks and Rec and what's going on right now. In our recreation department, our department is actually closed to the public. That doesn't mean we're not in the offices. We are in the offices. If anyone needs to call us, they can call us at 734-699-8921 or 8926. We are handling a lot of landfill passes out of our office. We're handling trash concerns, and we're working on recreation items and readying our parks for the season. So as far as recreation goes, we have canceled all of our classes and events through the summer. So we're talking about, as of right now, through Labor Day. Anyone who has signed up for a class or has paid for any of those type of classes that we offer, we are processing refunds, and they will see those coming to them in the mail in a few weeks once they work through our system. As far as the parks go, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each of our 5 parks and talk about what's happening and what we're doing. We'll start with Van Buren Park since it's our largest. Van Buren Park will open on June 22nd, which is next Monday. Our staff has been back working and they're getting things cleaned up and prepared so that everyone can enjoy the parks. The pavilion rentals have been canceled for 2020. Anyone who has paid for a pavilion rental, we are very busy processing all of those refunds, and we've called all of our renters and let them know what's happening. The play structure at Van Buren Park will also open on the 22nd. And we want our residents to know that the play structures are not sanitized. When you're out in the park, at any of the parks, please maintain social distancing and please keep good hygiene in mind. So the bathrooms are open. If your children are using the play structure, you can go in and use the restrooms and make sure you clean up. And I would as parents, we know that we always bring hand sanitizer and things to clean up when you're outside playing. So please do that. At Van Buren Park, the front restrooms will be open, and we have staff that will be maintaining those and making sure that they're clean and sanitized. throughout the parks, there's also going to be a lot of signage talking about social distancing, talking about the amenities that are open, and letting people know, how things are cleaned and how we're taking care of things. At Van Buren Park, we have a very small beach area in the back of the park. The beach area will remain closed for the 2020 summer season. And this is due to the very small size. It's about 800ths of an acre, and it's difficult to maintain any type of social distancing at this beach area. So that will remain closed for 2020. We'll move on to Quirk Park. Quirk Park, like Van Buren, will open next Monday, June 22nd. The pavilion rentals out there have been canceled, and we're processing refunds. That play structure will also open on Monday, June 22nd. The splash pad takes a little more work to get going. So the splash pad we have scheduled to open July 6th. That is a Monday, right after the 4th of July weekend. Please keep in mind, like the play structures, there's no way of sanitizing these things. It does have flow through water, so there's constantly new fresh water coming through the system. And anywhere you go right now, we want you to make sure you're maintaining some social distancing, maintaining good, proper hygiene. The restrooms will open at Quirk Park next Monday, June 22nd. Now, we also have a park over on Martinsville Road, just south of Huron River Drive, and that's Riggs Heritage Park. That will open on the 22nd. The restrooms out at Riggs will not open. It's a smaller park. It's a park where people will go and walk their dogs and maybe stretch their legs a little bit. It will be signed, and we want people to know that those restrooms will not open. French Landing Park, which is located on Haggerty near I-94 and Haggerty Road. That park is, again, another smaller park. The restrooms will not open at French Landing, but the park will open June 22nd. The last park that we have is a small park in Haggerty Sub, and that park is going to remain closed. So if anybody has any questions, please let me know.
Trustee Miller.
So, Director, can I ask why we're not opening the pavilions? We're opening the splash pad, we're opening certain venues of the park, but explain to the residents why the pavilions are canceled this year.
What we decided to do, since the pavilions really are there to congregate, they are there to bring people together, we decided that since we can't maintain social distancing within our pavilions, and since we can't set it up in that manner, that we would refund people's money. There was a lot of our residents, or many residents, that were asking about refunds. They were worried about coming together. They were worried about bringing families from different areas. And so we decided it's better just to cancel, make sure that they get their refunds. And what we're doing is we are taking some of the picnic tables away. The pavilions won't be closed. It's just that they won't be in a manner where people can have that normal party they would normally have each summer. So we've had a few calls, people asking, well, can I still come out and barbecue? Can I still have my family picnic? Absolutely. We're just stepping in to make sure that there is some social distancing. And the majority of people we've talked to completely understand, and they also don't want to be put in a position where maybe they're putting on this party maybe they shouldn't put on right now. So that's what we've decided to do in order to keep their best interests at heart.
Any other questions? Jerry Fraser?
Supervisor. Jennifer, thank you for that thorough report. It was very good, but I just wondered, now the splash pad will open.
Yes.
And we'll have signs up, but it's going to be pretty tough to keep kids 6 feet apart.
Right.
So I don't know how that's going to work.
Well, you know what? It's one of those things where we want to open, we want them to have a good time. It's a little bit different than maybe being out at camp or out at a play structure where you do have the water that's kind of cleansing a bit. I mean, I won't say it's sanitizing, but it does kind of keeping the surface ever changing and a little bit wet. And that's where the parenting steps in. So if maybe they feel like their child is not not safe in a situation or not staying as distant as they could be, maybe that's a decision they make whether they come or not. But we definitely want to open this up. We've got a lot of people itching to come on out and enjoy the summer.
Let's get it open, since we only had it open 2 weeks last year.
Yeah.
Or something.
I want to add that the state of Michigan knows all these things, and they're opening swimming pools and they're opening splash pads, and they understand. If the state had said that no, these pools and pads are dangerous, they have to stay closed, we would not be opening them.
Mhm.
In the latest executive order, it didn't state specifically this time around about splash pads. It did mention them when it was important to make sure that they were closed. So the thing that was mentioned this time around were outdoor pools. And they said outdoor pools could open at 50% capacity. So we are going to be keeping an eye on the capacity and making sure that people have the ability to stay safe.
Hey, Clerk, 1 second. Clerk, right? Did you have something? No. Last call for round one, round two. Reggie.
I have a question for Jennifer. So the playground equipment adjacent to the splash pad is open?
It will be open Monday.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Anybody else have a comment? Okay, well, thank you very much. That was a very good report. I'm looking forward to hopefully opening up fully next year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So it's basically, Supervisor, the parents are responsible. They're bringing their kids to the splash pad and to the playgrounds. And if they feel they're safe enough for their kids, they can use them.
Parents are the most responsible things in the world when it comes to their kids. They'll fall in a grenade for them. Think of a better person to watch out for the kids. All right. Okay, so next we're going to be going to a public discussion with the police department. Director Lorraine, I believe, and Chief Wright. Go ahead, you guys can start off.
I just had to unmute. Can you hear me?
Yes.
For starters, good evening, everyone. By now, the members of the board know about our last Friday's protest that happened without incident, and the protest was peaceful with approximately 150 to 200 in attendance. The success to a safe protest can be attributed to our police department planning and preparation for this event and the cooperation from the group Survivors Speak. Our department was made aware through social media of a peaceful protest that was going to take place in the parking lot of Meyer's store on Friday at 4 p.m. and then a march by the protesters to the Van Buren Township Hall and back. I was able to make contact early with the organizer of the group and confirm their intentions to protest. I advised her at the time that we would be there to police presence that day to ensure that they were able to safely exercise their First Amendment rights during the march. Early last week, our command staff put together a comprehensive operational plan to help facilitate a safe protest for all. On the day of the event, several other command officers and myself made contact with the organizer to confirm the direction of the protest march and reaffirm our presence was there to provide security during the event. The event lasted for approximately 2.5 hours without incident, with the exception of a woman who collapsed from heat exhaustion. I'd like to recognize my command staff for the planning and executing of this operational plan, and for our men and women that worked in that event that day, helping to get the protesters from point A to point B. Last but not least, I'd like to thank the group Survivors Speak for a peaceful protest also.
Absolutely.
On another related matter, was there any questions on the protest?
I just like to say I participated and I thought it was very well handled, and everybody was there for a good purpose. And I appreciated the police presence, but not over presence.
Thank you.
I think we did very well as a community.
Thank you. Trustee Martin?
Yes, Chief Lorraine and Director Lorraine and Chief Wright, your officers did an excellent job. You provided the safety that was needed. You had a great plan. The people were very compliant. and it was a very peaceful demonstration. I appreciate the work that you put in. There was a lot of officers present, and everyone was safe, and I heard no complaints, and everyone was respectful, and you did a great job, and thank you.
Thank you.
And I want to thank the city of Belleville for lending us their officers too. They did a wonderful job with ours. Thank you.
Supervisor.
Trustee White?
Yes, I too would like to thank the entire Public Safety Department. I was at Township Hall. I couldn't do the walk from Meyer to Township Hall and back, so I stayed at Township Hall, and I noticed how organized and how well run the police department was in looking over and keeping a close eye on this march. And I too am very thankful that it was peaceful and everybody demonstrated safety and with honor and with peace. And again, the Public Safety Department and the motorcycle officers and the patrol officers too all did a magnificent job in keeping control and oversight of this peaceful march. Thank you, Director and Captain.
Trustee Miller?
Although I was unable to attend Friday's march, I had an injury. I'm on crutches as we speak, and I have my foot propped up. I want you all to know that I support Black Lives Matter. It's okay. Are you all there? And
Yes.
we as leaders need to acknowledge the depth of racial injustice in our country and everywhere. And us as elected officials will definitely shape this process going forward. So I support this movement. I'm sorry I couldn't attend, but I had an injury. But I wanted everyone to know how I stand.
Thank you. In light of what you just said, you talked about some of those things. And so I believe that the chief and the director are going to, to let everybody know, what the board already knows is that Van Buren Township 3 years ago didn't begin. We completed what we had already started by adopting Obama's 21st century policing policies. They're all in effect here. De-escalation. One cop's got to basically go after another cop if he's out of line, and use of force has got to be reported and be checked over. I was asked to sign the Obama pledge for mayors that we would do things and review them. So I have no problem signing it, and I did sign those. I don't think people realize how forward-thinking this board and police group that we have here in Van Buren Township is. The happiest thing I hear from cops, and they laugh whenever I hear it, when they come in, they say their arms are tired. And the reason their arms are tired is because they're waving at so many citizens that are waving at them. Hello, 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 hello. And but now it's time that we report out some of these numbers that we got, some of these policies that we have. Chief and Director, could you continue on with your discussion?
Yes, if I could just make a few comments here on this topic. I'd like to speak briefly on current events that we all know occurred in Minneapolis involving the death of Mr. George Floyd at the hands of the police while in custody. This has sparked protests and civil unrest across the nation and the world, calling for police reform for all police departments. The actions of those officers were grotesque, inhumane, and just wrong. This is not how the vast majority of police officers conduct themselves, and currently not here in Van Buren Township. The actions by these officers that we witnessed that day sickened many professional law enforcement agencies across the nation, including the men and women of Van Buren Police Department. People that our officers come into contact are treated with dignity and respect, whether they are a complainant, a victim of a crime, or a suspect. As the head of your public safety department, I want to assure you that we have a professional men and women protecting and answering calls for service and treating all equally with dignity and respect. A demand for police reform is being heard across the nation because of the actions of few rogue cops. Police officers in their profession are being painted with a broad brush because of these bad cops. Police department policies and procedures are again under a microscope, and rightfully so. The people are asking and demanding that it's time for bold reforms that ensure equal justice under the laws extend to everyone is now. Some of the recommendations for police reforms are found in Task Force on the 21st Century Policing Report and the National Consensus Policy on the Use of Force for Police Agencies. Our department has undergone a significant change in our policy and procedure manual since 2015. The reforming of the entire manual was based on the 21st Century Policing Report along with the National Consensus Policy on the Use of Force. This includes the most up-to-date state, federal laws and law enforcement best practices. Our policies that are in place are the latest in contemporary policing. The majority of the reforms that are being discussed nationwide are requiring de-escalation training for all officers and de-escalate when possible before using force, deadly force. Ban chokeholds and neck restraints, which we prohibit. Require officers to intervene and stop excessive force by other officers and report these incidents immediately to a supervisor, which we updated. Ban police shootings at moving vehicle unless a person posing a deadly threat by means of other than a vehicle. Requiring officers to give verbal warnings when possible before using deadly force. The use of force continuum or the force objectively reasonableness to gain control and compliance of a subject. Require officers to exhaust all their reasonable alternatives before resorting to use of deadly force. And last but not least, requiring comprehensive reporting system that includes review on individuals' incidents and annual reviews by the supervisory staff and the command personnel. To reiterate the supervisor's statement, these policies have already been instituted within our policy and procedure manual. Now you're going to hear from Chief Wright, who will provide you with specific information on the use of force within our department that has been used in Van Buren Township by our officers. Chief Wright.
Okay, am I up and running?
Yes.
Okay, great. Board, thank you for listening to us on this matter. I'm very pleased to be able to tell you what our department is doing so that you have an idea of what types of force gets used by our officers through the course of their duties in the township. I can tell you that we are very, very proactive in monitoring and reviewing our use of force encounters with our citizens. Our use of force is critical, as you all know, based on all the national attention, but it's critical for us because we need to know what our officers are doing and we need to know immediately. Our use of force includes, like the director said, de-escalation. We use de-escalation every day. We require our officers to intercede if they witness excessive force. We require our officers to report excessive force with supervisors immediately. We complete use of force forms anytime we use any type of force. It undergoes a review process. That's our warning sign. So every time use of force is used, we report it. It's reported by the officer. It's required to be reported by the officer. It's reviewed by a sergeant. It's reviewed by a lieutenant, and then it's reviewed by me. We make sure what we're looking for is we're making sure that our policy is followed, and we're making sure that we're not using excessive force, that we're only using the necessary force to accomplish a legitimate law enforcement purpose. We do annual training on our use of force that involves scenario-based training with our officers, learning and actively using de-escalation techniques, verbal commands, verbal communication with unruly people. And we conduct a yearly report on what we do. So I'm going to give you a brief summary of 2018 because I want to give you a snapshot of 2018, 2019, and we're in 2020, obviously, right now. So to give you an idea for 2018, and I'm only speaking on 2018 right now, we had 23,592 calls for service that our officers responded to. We made 1,349 arrests in 2018, and we administered 22 uses of force. All of our force was reviewed by multiple command officers and the police administration, and it was deemed to be appropriate. Our officers use force when they are confronted with dangerous situations and when subjects failed to comply. The common denominator in why we use force or why we have to use force in all of the use of force reports that I reviewed is people are failing to comply. When we tell them you're under arrest, put your hands behind your back, they're not. And it's causing us to have to use force. Some examples of the type of force is, like I said, officers dealing with uncooperative subjects who do not want to put their hands behind their back. Officers who have had to wrestle or grapple with people. They've utilized pressure points and joint locks to gain control of them to take them into custody. Officers have had to tackle fleeing felons who are running on foot. Officers have had to use their taser from time to time to gain control of an active, aggressive subject resisting or fighting. And officers have had to point their firearms at subjects who are either armed with weapons. Officers have had to apply force and hold subjects up against walls to get them in cuffs or to get them under control. They've also had to use force to stop from being bitten by individuals. But most of the force that we've had to use is basically just muscular control of trying to handcuff people who don't want to go to jail. We've also had to euthanize animals in our community. Unfortunately, we have deer that get hit and they're hurt so bad that we've had to euthanize a few animals as well each year. To give you an idea of the demographics of the recipients of force, subjects we've had to use force on, for 2018 out of the 22, 7 of them were females, 15 were male, 9 were African American, and 13 were Caucasian. And the average age of the suspect who resists us or we've had to use force is 34 years old. With regards to 2019 now, we had 24,172 calls for service. So our calls for service were up from the previous year. We had 1,549 arrests, which was an increase of 200 more arrests in 2019. We administered 36 uses of force. Again, we had a couple animals we had to euthanize as well in that. All of those uses of force were reviewed by our command staff. They've gone all the way up the chain to myself and the director, and all of them were deemed to be appropriate. I can tell you that out of the demographics on that use of force, all of the use of force was similar to the previous year as far as what it was. It was 10 females, 10 females this time, 26 males, 22 African-American, and 15 Caucasian, and the average age dropped to 28 years old. It's important to note that we did have an increase from 18 to 19, from 22 uses of force to 36. We also had about 150 more calls for service, and we did make 200 additional physical arrests, which exposes us to potential for use of force. I can tell you that the Van Buren Township is committed, the police department, and I know the township as well, as a whole, the board, we're committed to protecting and serving our community. We strive to maintain our professionalism. We respect human life and dignity. And as the director said, we don't allow any type of neck restraints or chokeholds. It has never been taught in my entire career. I know it has not been taught in the director's career, and he has a few more years on than me. But we do not condone it, train in it, or allow it. We condemn it. A couple other points of interest that I think would be important for you to know is during 2018, we only had to discharge our tasers twice for the entire year. Out of those 22 uses of force, 2 of them were taser incidents. On 2019, we pointed our taser 3 times to get compliance. We never had to deploy it or charge it up, which is very promising. For 2018, we had 1 police officer that was bitten as an injury. And out of those 22 uses of force, we had 5 subjects who were injured as a result of it. One of the subjects was a self-inflicted gunshot wound that we were dealing with. Another subject was a self-infliction laceration that our officers were engaged dealing with. And 3 subjects had sustained minor scratches and abrasions. In 2019, we had 1 officer bitten, and we had 3 subjects that had self-inflicted injuries as a result of it. Again, I would tell you the common denominator in our use of force in our township is people are not complying with lawful orders or arrest. And the other thing that I would like to point out is when I read these use of force report forms, our officers are using a tremendous amount of restraint. They are de-escalating. Whenever they can, they do talk to people. They do try to get them to comply verbally. The last thing that any of our officers want to do is hurt anyone intentionally. They don't want to hurt anyone anyways. And our officers do not want to bring dishonor to our township. They do not want to be on national news drawing negative attention for improper conduct whatsoever. That is not who we are. And we do everything we can to try to prevent that from happening here. And that's all I had to say about it. If you have any questions specifically about any of the force numbers or anything I can help you with, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
We've never reported these numbers before just because we didn't know that anybody really, I mean, we kept them internally to see if there's a trend going on, but I mean, and part of this, my brother's keeper or Black Lives Matter is that we need to review and report. We will report out every report that we do, and we do quite a few of them. Trustee Martin, are you getting forward to speak?
Yes. Thank you for your report, Chief Wright. We had talked about that earlier, and you're telling me you were getting that together. And I think making this public is just part of our being transparent and letting citizens know that we're aware of what we're doing, and the police force have been properly trained, and they utilize their training daily.
Clerk Wright.
Yes, I would like to say thank you to you guys also. I mean, I think you did a great job Friday. And we know, I mean, the board knows, and I think the majority of the community knows that we have a very good police department. We have good people in place as manager, but as we all know, it all comes from the top down. And when I say that, that means it comes from the township board down. And as long as we are doing what we're supposed to do and putting out the right message that we need to put out in regards to this. Trustee Miller and I was talking earlier, and I told her something. I heard a phrase that I hadn't heard before, that I was listening to a podcast, and the gentleman talking about Black Lives Matters and the issue that's going on. And he said more is caught, C-A-U-G-H-T, than taught, T-A-U-G-H-T. And I think, and that was strong. It was a strong message because I never thought about it like that. And what he meant was that we can talk and we can have these conversations, and we need to, because I know most of the conversation I have, we got to get away from saying that whenever we need to talk about race and the issues that's coming to the forefront now, it's not as much as the police department, but we all know it's the 2% that makes the entire departments look bad, or across the country. It's the 2% that makes elected officials look bad. You know, it's the 2% that make lawyers look bad. But what he meant by more is caught than what is taught is that you can say all good things, but until you start to put them in actions, that's when it's realized. For instance, you can say, you know, I don't see color. My best friend is Black, but your kids catch what they see. They catch the actions that they see their parents doing, their grandparents, their uncles, their aunts. It's not much of what they hear or what you tell them, it's what they see you do in actions. So you can say that I don't see color, but you know, we all know it's color there. Color's out there. If you don't see color, you're colorblind, because there are colors. But it's your actions that gets the attention, and that's what's meaningful. That's why he may have said it's more caught than what's taught. So we need to. It's good to have a conversation, but we need to step up and show that, and also that what we're talking about, we need to walk the walk, and just don't talk the talk. We need to walk the walk. Our police department is great. I don't think the movement in the rally had much to do with our police department at all. It's just the idea of what's going on. Black Lives Matter has been out on the forefront since Ferguson, is just kind of marinating, and this incident happened again. And what I think on what they're trying to say is we want to talk, we want to bring it back to the forefront. We want to talk about it, and let's talk, and let's more now. They want to see actions other than just talking. And but they want to be able to engage and get our elected officials. And it's good. It was good to see the ones that was there that could come out. And I know Trustee Miller, you would have been there if you could have. But it's a good thing that we showed up. You don't always have to say something, but it's like I said, it's your actions that shows. More is caught than what is taught.
Trustee Fraser.
I'd just like to thank the director and the chief for being proactive in their policing attitude. They are out in front and they stay up on the issues and they get out in front of it. And I think that makes a big difference in the community. And I think we have an excellent police force that does their job. And I think the community is well pleased with that they can look to the police as their friend and as a person that will help them. And I appreciate them reaching out to the schools, to the young people, so that they see police not just when they need them, but on a personal basis. That's important also. They've done a great job on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Bud, Treasurer Bud, did you want to speak?
Well, I guess I just reiterate what everybody else has said. I'm certainly very proud of our department and what they've done, and I'm proud of the folks that took part in it, that it was a peaceful demonstration. And I think we could all say the same thing. There was lives lost that shouldn't have been, and together we will solve this problem. And thanks again to our public safety director and our chief, Jason Wright. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
In the future, we'll be getting more reports. I mean, these reports usually are just used internally. And, you know, when you've got any use of force, you could look at it like, why did that happen? But this isn't a ballerina. This is a tough job cops have gotten. So, you know, sometimes it gets down to that. But the idea is who's doing it and review of it, and make sure there's policies in place to make sure that it's de-escalated and you know, somebody's not profiling or, you know, and that's why we track these things. And that's why we talk about. We are listening, and we are going to keep this listening going, and we are going to keep this reporting going, this transparency going, and we are going to continue this tour. We're joining with Belleville to do a formal one in a month or two, probably at the high school. Okay. Anybody else have anything to say?
Just thank you, Director Lorraine and Chief Wright.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to move on down to the next one. Is Plant Moran ready for us? Because if they're not, I can do one other thing before Plant Moran.
We are going to be promoting them right now.
Okay, promote them.
And Aaron, when you're ready, you can unmute and turn on your camera.
There we go. Good evening, everyone. Can you also, is Dave Halsek a presenter too, Ryan?
I'm sorry, what was that name again?
Dave Halsek.
Thank you.
Okay, we're presenting the 2019 audit. So we'll, actually, this does require a vote to be received and filed. So can I get a motion for receiving and filing?
Through the chair, I would make a motion that we consider and approve the 2019 annual Buren Township after the presentation.
Support.
Okay, Trustee Fraser. Okay, you're three at the same. Please continue.
All right. Well, it's great to be back in front of the Township Board once again. This is a different way of being in front of you, but if I can reintroduce myself, I'm Dave Helisek. I'm an audit partner with Plant Moran. With me this evening is Erin Brzezinski. She is an audit manager with Plant Moran, and we're pleased to be able to present to you the results of the annual financial statement audit for the Charter Township of Van Buren for the year ended December 31st, 2019. You should have had delivered to you 3 documents that we're going to cover at least a little bit of each part today. The financial statement document, the letter to those charged with governments, which would include required audit communications, and then finally, Erin's going to be covering some graphs, which will be the majority of our presentation this evening. Erin and I did meet with Township Management a couple weeks ago to go through all these documents I'd say pretty thoroughly. We essentially went through all the pages, all the funds, all the notes, and just made sure that there was an understanding of the information that was turned over, was properly compiled by us and audited us and presented in a manner that is brought before you this evening. The only part of the financial statement that's truly ours is the opinion. And the opinion, once again, as a result of our audit procedures, is an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance that we can give a set of financial statements. What that means is these statements as presented fairly reflect the financial position of the township as of December 31st, 2019. And the change in that financial position are the revenues, expenditures, and cash flows that are reported within the document. Again, it's the highest level of assurance that we can give a set of financial statements, and one that we were happy to give as a result of these audit procedures. Also included in the audit opinion this year would have been an emphasis of matter paragraph. And we would have had a communication to the board prior to the beginning of the audit, which essentially would have described that we anticipated an emphasis of matter as it related to the required implementation, at least at the time of GASB Statement 84. We had been talking about GASB Statement 84 for a number of years, and it was required to be implemented this year, and the township properly did so. It really had to do with the reporting and recording of information as it relates to the township's fiduciary funds in a little bit different way than it had been reported in the past. To be honest, and unless I pointed it out, it's not really a fund that the township deals with. It's not a general fund. It's not really a special revenue fund. It really has to deal with the information that, or I'm sorry, the monies that the township handles on a fiduciary basis. For the most part, it's the property taxes that the township collects and redisperses to other local units of government. So we've included that in this year as required by the standards. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Erin, who's going to cover the graphs. Mr. Supervisor, I don't know how you want to handle questions in this environment. If we wait till the end, or if we want to answer them as we go along, we'll defer to you.
As we go along.
Okay.
Not a line. Okay.
Perfect.
Pretty straightforward stuff.
Yeah, I think so. Perfect.
I'm just going to share my screen with the graph presentation here. So hopefully you all can see it.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. Okay. There we go. Alrighty, so good evening. Presented in front of you here is a set of graphs that outline the township's financial activity for the 2019 fiscal year. We find it helpful to look at in graph form as it allows you to see trends from previous years. As the supervisor mentioned, if you have any questions as we're going through, feel free to ask them as we're going through here. So we're going to start on slide 1. This shows your revenue for the general fund only, the 101 fund. Total revenue for the general fund was approximately $17.2 million, which is an increase of about $1.2 million compared to 2018. The township's most significant revenue source is your property taxes, which is shown by the teal bar at the bottom here. Property tax revenue was approximately $6.8 million, which is an increase of about $195,000 compared to last year due to an increase in taxable value. Your state sources listed here includes your state shared revenue of about $2.7 million and your personal property tax reimbursement of $182,000 for an overall increase in your state sources compared to last year of about $118,000. Other revenue includes your charges for services, your license and permits, any contributions and grants, and then your investment income. The other revenue items increased about $365,000 compared to last year, which is due to a MMRMA reimbursement that was received and also an increase in your investment income. And then finally, the operating transfers listed here are from the landfill fund to be used for operations, and that did increase to $2.3 million. On the next slide here, we have your general fund expenditures. Total expenditures for the year were about $17.2 million, which is an increase from 2018 of about $720,000. You can see by the orange bar here that the largest portion of your expenditures are within your public safety department, which make up approximately 61% of total expenditures for the fund. Your public safety expenditures increased about $1.2 million compared to last year due to some additional capital outlay and then additional personnel costs. General government expenditures in the teal bar here did increase about $1 million, and that was really for capital outlay related to the new Quirk Park splash pad that was built this year. And then the other items shown in dark blue at the top, last year there was a transfer out to the long-term debt fund of about $1.5 million that did not occur in 2019, so you'll see a decrease in those expenditures this year. Moving on to the third slide here, shows the fund balance for your general fund. Overall fund balance increased just slightly from last year, about $17,000 for a total of $7.5 million. As far as the components, those are broken out first to non-spendable fund balance of about $185,000. And this is just fund balance that's not in a spendable form and includes your prepaid expenses. And then you have your assigned fund balance shown in orange. Assigned amounts are intended to be used for a specific purpose as identified by management. These aren't committed or restricted in any way. They've just been identified to be used for a future use. The township has assigned for a few different items, including future debt service payments, equipment replacement, and retiree contributions for about $1.9 million in total. And that leaves your unassigned fund balance, which can be used for any purpose, of about $5.4 million, which is an increase from $4.7 million last year. And then the last slide we have here, previously we were looking at the general fund. This has activity for your water and sewer fund. Your operating revenue in the water and sewer fund was about $10.2 million, an increase of about $1.4 million compared to last year. And really that increase is due to large tap fees that were received by the township this year due to a large warehouse development that occurred in the township. And then your operating expenses also increased about $588,000. A few different areas saw an increase, both your water and sewer treatment costs increase, and then you had a few some additional SAW grant expenses included in here as well. So like we mentioned, that was kind of a high level overview of the financial statements. Are there any questions that you guys have?
Are you going to be continuing on into the audit? You have more to speak on?
Dave's going to cover kind of the overall audit, the end of audit letter.
I'm going to talk a little bit. Hi, this is Dave. I'm going to talk about the letter, but there's a couple of pages I want to refer to in the statement, if that's all right, Mr. Supervisor.
Yes, please.
If we take a look at the statement itself, one of the things that has gotten a lot of discussion over the past years, and I know the township has been addressing it as well, has been really evolved around legacy costs. So the benefits that have been earned in the way of pensions and retiree health care, and how the township has funded that historically, and what the trends are looking like. So if I could ask you to turn to page 56 of your financial statement, and I'll give you a minute to try to do that. At the top, it should say required supplementary information, schedule of changes in net position, liability, and related ratios.
Title.
So are the board members to that page? If maybe a hand wave if you're not. And
We're good.
Okay, so this is really the GASB statement 6768 were implemented by the township as required some 5 years ago. And part of the standard is to give what will ultimately be 10 years worth of history as it relates to the funding. The funding percentage is also the projected liability and assets have been put aside by the township to fund those liabilities. So here on this page, you can see years 2014 through 2018, and you may say, David, why it's 2019. You told me you gave an opinion on the 2019 numbers. Why do we only see 2018? Well, as this board knows, as far as pensions are concerned, the Van Buren Township is part of the MERS pension system, which has a December year end. And due to the fact they're going through their own audit right now, the standards allow you actually to report 1 year in arrears. So this is related to the December 31st, 2019, I'm sorry, December 31st, 2018 plan year. And what I'd like to call your attention to really is the funding percentage, which is the third row from the bottom. So as you can see, for the most part, the funding levels have been around anywhere from 70 to 75, almost to 80%. For over the last 5 years. And why that's important, we may recall a couple of years ago under Public Act 202, the state and Treasury in particular were trying to define what might be an underfunded pension. And they set levels on at 60%. So as far as Treasury is concerned, when on an annual basis, there's a report that needs to be filled out. And when the township puts these numbers in the 70s here, they get to kind of check the box and move on. There's not a corrective action plan that needs to be implemented. When you take a look at 2018, you'll see the funding percentage did drop from 79.25% to 70.97%. And really that was a result, if we can think way back to December of 2018, and I can think way back because I have this discussion with every one of my MERS clients. In December of 2018, there was a dip in the market, a pretty significant one that actually came back in March of 2019. Well, the plan was measured as of December 31st of 2018. So there was actually an investment loss at the time that was being reported. I think we're anticipating when the information gets released for 2019, the December 31st, 2019 markets were at a record high at that point. And we see some growth and see that hopefully that number would be back closer to where it was in 2017. So, the township continues to fund it. MERS provides the information as far as what the contribution should be. And all of that information is included in this document. If I could get you to turn two pages back, and it's a similar chart. This one here focuses on post-retirement health care. And really what's unique about pensions versus health care is health care really wasn't even measured, this liability, even measured up until about 10 years ago. Pension had always been out there. There's been calculations, actuarial determinations for years and years and years. But until the implementation of a new standard, it wasn't even measured, let alone beginning to be funded. With the implementation of GASB 74 and 75 back in 2017, the township began to measure and report on what the liability was, as well as the assets that have been entrusted to pay for those costs. And you can see when you take a look on this chart, we're actually going to be looking at the bottom line. And you can see where the township was in 2017 compared to where it is in 2019 as far as funding a liability. One could argue that that wasn't measured up until that point. And the funding percentage is essentially doubled. It's went from 11.28% in 2017 to 19.55% in 2019. And 2019 is the correct number because this is the township's plan. So its plan year is the township's plan year. So this is measured as of December 31st of 2019. So you can see that the trend here is a really positive one. The third set of lines from the bottom where it says plan fiduciary net position, really those are the monies and the assets that have been entrusted. And if you take a look at it, it's moved from 2.9 million in 2017 to over 4.5 million in 2019. So the trend is in the right direction. I know that the township has been proactive in setting monies aside in addition to the pay-as-you-go dollars, to try to ensure that today's users are really trying to cover today's cost on the township as a whole. So again, the trend is clearly in the right direction. The township's been proactive in properly funding these longer-term liabilities.
And just because I want to add on to the fact that although we couldn't lower the numbers by eliminating future retiree health care, by eliminating future retiree health care, these numbers can't get worse. The stock market can make them go worse, but the big number can't get bigger because there's nobody adding on to this system. Back to you, Dave.
Thank you. So if there's no other questions related to the numbers, what I just covered and what Erin had covered as part of her graph presentation, I'd like to move and just cover some very high level communications to those charged with governance. So we have a 19-page letter, and rest assured we will not be covering 19 pages this evening. I would say it was fair to say we covered most of it actually at our earlier meeting. But really what this is there's two required communications and then some information that we feel is important enough. A lot of it's legislative that we make sure that the township, the board and finance staff is aware of. So we've broken this communication into three sections, an internal control section, required communication, and legislative. The first one is related to internal controls. So as I mentioned earlier, when we do our audit, we issue an opinion on the financial statements. We do not do an internal control audit or issue an opinion on the internal controls. What we do is we get an understanding of the internal controls. We assess the risk of those internal controls. We identify any potential strengths or weaknesses, and we tailor our audit procedures towards those findings. When there's something that comes across from a control standpoint that we feel needs or should be communicated, we will do so in this communication. The exception really to that is when we have journal entries. So if journal entries get to a certain threshold, then we do communicate that in this letter as well. So what we're happy to report, even though we do have a communication, is it related to a journal entry, as far as the controls are concerned in the testing we did, there was nothing that came to our attention that would have indicated as a result of our testing that there would be any sort of control item that would have got to the level of a material weakness or a significant deficiency. What we did have was a couple of journal entries that we're required to report on. The township has historically passed on a couple of journal entries as it relates to really equity type items, the investment in the Aerotropolis and in the South Huron Valley. And really the reason is those audits are really running concurrently with the township's audit. So they get a very good estimate, but by the time it's finalized, we're well into a finalized number here. So the township has the ability, since the numbers are immaterial, to choose to pass on reporting those journal entries, which they've done. And we're just required, as we have done in the past, to report that information to all of you. We do agree and concur with the township that those figures that are being passed on are immaterial to the state, to the township's financial statements as a whole. The only other item that we noted was as it relates to the DDA project. So in last year's financial statements and the DDA, the thought was that that building was actually going to be recorded as a township asset as it got finalized, and that's where it had been reported last year. As it finalized, it was determined that it would actually be an asset of the DDA. So we adjusted the statements accordingly, and since it was material to the Downtown Development Authority, we ended up restating the beginning net position. So the asset's in the right place. You know, that it really wouldn't have impacted anything that you would have done or any decision made. It was just ultimately where that asset would have ended up.
We knew we had to do that. What happened was we went to apply to register the DDA property. And the DDA was located within this building, and they sent the deed into the register of deed. We promptly registered the property that the DDA bought in the name of the Van Buren Home. When we got it, and they tried to make the change back, the deeds threw up a million different things, so we just recorded it and gave it to them.
Yeah, So it was all in the statement. It's just a matter of really what column it was in as far as the asset being recorded, because the DDA, because it's a component unit of the township, actually gets reported in the township statement as well.
Yeah.
The next communication is the required communication to those charged with governance. So you may recall prior to the audit starting, Aaron and I would have sent a communication out related to how we planned on attacking this year's audit. We had identified the areas that would be more risky, and every audit has risk. It's really based on a relative basis. We identified those areas. We identified how we planned on testing them, and also give you the ability, if you had any comments or concerns, to contact us, and we would incorporate that in any of our audit procedures. So happy to, as I indicated earlier, we're happy to, as a result of our audit, we've got an unmodified opinion. We had no disagreements with management as far as the reporting of information. It was all authoritative, complied with current GASB's, generally accepted accounting principles. To be honest, if it would have been a pretty significant disagreement, we would have been before this board prior to this evening's meeting. And then finally, the last item, really in the legislative section, and I just want to cover a couple of items. On page 9, the COVID Resource Center. So we've tried to, at least, and I know I've sat in on a couple meetings with the township board as it relates, or some members of the township board as it relates to the CARES Act and some of the language that's in there. But we provided and maintain a COVID resource center. So there's a link if anyone's interested in seeing kind of what's out there, not only from a governmental standpoint, but we've also got information from many industries. But I try to reach out directly to members of the township when we get something significant that we know is going to impact the township, and help them try to assess how it might look and what to do with the monies, if any, that they could or should be receiving. On page,
excuse me. So
yes.
you're saying that you would assist us in getting any grants or anything that's available to the township regarding COVID?
Well, I can't assist you in getting grants. What we're trying to do is let you know when we know that there's resources out there, we can make you aware of them. And if monies come in, how we can help with understanding the allowability and eligibility as to how those monies can be used. And that was really, I'm thinking of a main discussion we had about a month ago, where I sat in with, at the time, the supervisor, the clerk, the treasurer. I think we had HR in there with some monies from the original CARES Act, and how that really the PPP plan could be implemented. by the township.
Okay. Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Sure. As far as legacy costs on page 11, I talked about it and had those big charts. And if you want to maybe a little bit more compact version of it with just dealing with the funding percentages, that's in the middle of page 11. So there's that's available to you. And then the last item I wanted to talk about just real briefly that's not in here, but I know we're all hearing about it, is revenue sharing. So there's been, probably about 3 weeks ago, there was a revenue sharing conference. And as Aaron had indicated, state shared revenues is a pretty big component of the township's general fund revenues. And as a result of the estimate conference back in May, now normally there's only 2 estimate revenue consensus cost conferences, one in January and then one, which did occur, and then another one in May. So the one that was done about 3 weeks ago, the focus was really on state shared revenues, because as we know, with the slowdown or maybe shutdown of the economy, the sales tax merit revenues would have been lowered, and those are the monies that get shared based on a formula to the local units of government. So as a result of that conference, compared to what the January estimates were going to be for the 2002 fiscal year, which the 2002 fiscal year is the state's fiscal year, which is a September 30 year end. Their estimates for the September 30th, 2020 year end were down about $53 million or 6.1%.
Oh.
So what that means is that you could probably should anticipate your June 30 and August 31st state shared revenue numbers to be a little bit lower than what would have been projected in January. Now I can tell you that, and I know Carol and Sean from your finance department are aware of where to get these numbers, but the state does have, Treasury does have a website where you can take a look at what your estimated and actual numbers are. And they have included, I'll say, a little bit more information that indicates when the last time those figures were updated. And I checked before I went on today or before we presented today, and those are based on the May revenue sharing conferences. They also went and projected 2021, again, compared to what they were projecting in January of this year. And that number is down, I've got my number written down here. How much was that down? Down $109 million or a 12% decrease. Again, that's the state share. That's the constitutional portion only. There is a second portion, CVTRS, formerly known as the statutory revenue portion of it. That really is done as part of the budget. So while there is a formula, it needs to be funded, is not tied constitutionally like the first part of it. So I know Sean and Carol could provide the township is with exactly what those numbers would look like for this year. What that does mean is those payments get paid bi-monthly every other month. So there'd be a June payment and an August payment that would still be coming in this 2020 year. And since those are part of the budget, for the numbers to actually have changed, there would have to be an act by the legislature to change those CVTRS numbers for this year.
So do you think they'll change them? Or unlikely that they will?
Well,
I mean, I don't see why revenue to the township should go down when we're in need, at this time.
Yep. So let me speak to the constitutional. The constitutional is based on a pure formula on sales tax. So if state of Michigan sales tax goes up, based on the formula, the amount that gets distributed to local units of government goes up.
Goes up.
Yep. If sales tax revenues go down, which is, I think, what all of us thought would happen as a result of the slowdown or shutdown of the Michigan economy, that is going to be the impact. What they're estimating is what the ramp up may look like. So again, those are going to be estimates. The numbers that are ultimately shared are based on actual receipts on a 2-month lag. So for instance, when you get to June 30 payments, that's really based on the the March and April sales tax revenues. So when you get the August payments, it's based on the May and June. So there's a little bit of a lag on that. So there, I mean, there's, you know, that has no impact on the state budget. It's the constitutional number. It's a formula. What comes in essentially goes out. And which, I mean, there's other, I mean, part of it is, you know, the school aid fund gets part of it. And I mean, there's other parts, but really it is based on the amount of revenues, sales tax revenues that are collected on a 2-month basis. So
I gave a little smile only because Clerk Wright, myself, and Treasurer Bud were talking about this a lot over the last few months. And although it sounds like it will be about a $150,000 hit in our 2020, based on what Mr. Hadley Sexton has pulled the budget, and about $300,000 hit to next. So based on what I just heard.
So what's different this year though, is there's going to be a third revenue sharing estimate or revenue estimating conference.
Okay.
And that's really based because of the deferral of the tax deadlines from April 15th to July 15th. So normally when you have the May revenue sharing conference, the April 15th tax returns are received from the state. And they've got a good handle on what the revenues would be. They've got estimated payments. They're doing estimates based on that. Now with that deadline, you know, deferred until July 15th, a lot of those numbers won't be available until that time. So they will be having a third one. They're anticipating, Treasury had an update. They're anticipating it being in August this year. Because really what they're trying to do, and when we dig down, that this revenue estimating is really estimating state revenue resources. And, you know, obviously those do have some direct and some trickle down impacts on local units of government. So again, we'll try to, as soon as we get the information, we'll try to pass it along. But what we're hearing is it's going to be sometime in August when that last revenue estimate conference is going to happen.
Okay, if there's no further questions, now is the time when I thank Sherry, Treasurer Bud. Treasurer Bud prepares to thank her people. You're muted. It's a lot of work for them.
Okay, yeah. Of course, we always enjoy when they're in our building, and I must say, very thankful for my deputy, for the deputy that Leon has for our accounting coordinator and our bookkeeper, and everyone that stops whatever they need to do, supply their material. I think it's always been a good relationship to both of our companies, and we certainly appreciate you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The clerk's office is buzzing. We'll thank him after the election.
Supervisor, I'd just like to thank our Treasurer Treasurer Bud and her staff for, you know, keeping everything in great shape for the township so that we can get great reports like this. It's a lot of work, and certainly keeping up with the state guidelines and how things change. That's not an easy task.
David,
Thank you.
that was your report? I'd like a few words if you're done. Are you done?
Yeah, I mean, again, just thanking the township staff and the clerk's office, the treasurer's office, and the supervisor's office. It was, I'll say, kind of unique. We were maybe 2/3 of the way through the audit when everything shut down. So Van Buren was one of the last places Aaron and I actually visited. We look forward to visiting other places again soon. But the ability really to kind of to complete the audit in a remote environment is really an attribute to the township and its ability to be able to pivot on essentially a dime and still meet all the filing requirements as required by the state.
Supervisor.
Trustee Clerk Wright.
I'd like to say something real quick. I just like to say thanks to David and Aaron and all you guys staff. You do a great job every year. You're always professional, courteous. You're right. We got shut down and probably right at the end of it. But as always, you guys, you come in and you take care of business and you do it in a professional manner. We appreciate it. And I think the numbers has to go. I mean, the good news that we are getting in the state of the that we are in right now is a testament of the work that the entire board puts in and the dedication that you do by overseeing the budget, and Sherry and what you and Sean do daily. And sometimes it's good to be a little tight at times because it pays off when you in time of need. And this is definitely time of need. So good job.
I just want to make this statement because this is just, I mean, I'm not doing a state of the township address. I probably should, because I think in all these numbers, what we didn't hear was some of the numbers that I want to tell you. First of all, we budgeted for a $1.5 million loss this year based against, we were doing a lot of capital improvement. We completed the police headquarters. We completed both fire station buildings. We completed almost the administration building. We bought new furniture. We bought 200 acres of prime real estate. We built $1 million splash pad. We did a park. We did some other work in the other parks. And bottom line is, we have $17,000 more than we did last year. I know it's not a lot, but it's a miracle that we made up. We have $17,000 more than we did last year. Yes,
Yay!
And it's half and half. It was half of them still saying God bless them, and it was half of our own people getting revenue and cuts and not filling positions, and we did a lot of that because we just didn't. We were working hard to make up for that, but we should be pretty darn proud of that. And also, interestingly enough, and I don't know how this works, Dave, but we're worth $4 million more than we were last year. So. I'll take it. So yeah, we should be pretty happy. We should probably do a state of the township address because we did do a lot last year. Okay. Thank you, Aaron, Michelle. Thank her. Your team is awesome. You guys are great. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We're gonna move on. Bye.
Thank you.
Let's see, where are we at here? Okay, the next item is a discussion. This is going to be a discussion of the COVID expense line item. In the end of it, I'm going to ask for $50,000.
Hey, Kevin, did we? I know we made a motion. Did we vote on that motion?
Oh no,
no, we haven't made a motion on it.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, I thought we made a motion on the
Just
budget.
added it to the agenda.
We added, she's right. We just added it.
We added it to the agenda.
She's
So
right.
We made a motion to approve the budget as presented.
Right.
I made it, Sherry Fraser seconded. We haven't voted on that motion to adopt the audit.
Oh, it's in the it's in that?
Okay,
Yes.
so hearing no further discussion, Clerk, would you please call the roll to receive and file the audit?
Okay, Supervisor White.
Hey.
Yes. Yes.
Supervisor, I'm sorry. What am I saying? Supervisor. I mean Supervisor McNair. Reggie,
Yes.
Trustee Miller. I'm looking at
Yes.
your titles up here and getting them mixed up. Kevin, Trustee Martin,
Yes.
Trustee Fraser,
Yes.
Treasurer Bud.
Yes.
Yes for me. Trustee Martin.
Yes, again.
You guys' names are switching around on me. Who did I miss?
No, I'll say yes.
Supervisor McNair. Every time I put the one on your name, it's switched around on the board, so I'm going round and round in a circle. Okay, I think I got it.
I am going to, okay, so the motion passes and we're moving on. I am going to use the right that I learned I can do and make the motion for approval. What I would like to make a motion to approve adding $10,000 to the COVID expense line item and opening discussion on that. Do I have support?
Support.
Support by Trustee Miller. Okay, the long and the short of it is this. Trustee, we have spent $44,000 on COVID and COVID-related material. God bless Reggie, Trustee Miller. You got us 25,000 of that, and that was spent, every penny of it, on feeding the people of Van Buren Township and helping out some at-risk groups. That left 14,000, so $19,000. We only put $10,000 in that line item, so we're $10,000 short right now. When we put that $10,000 into that line item, we assumed we were going to sooner or later see a grant or offer by somebody to help us out. We have this week we have gone out and scoured the countryside for grants. We have found one. We actually have found another group that will probably be giving us 10,000. We have found the FEMA grant, which we are going to have to apply for. But the point of the matter is we now have to start paying for COVID-related expenses from now till, well, I don't know when it'll ever end, but this year it's going to be December 31st. We'll still be paying for those expenses. So the $10,000 that we put in the bank, we now have $19,000 expenses against it. I'd like to add $50,000 to that line item. Although I hope to find revenues to back those up. I'd hope to find $50,000 or $60,000 in grants to put on the revenue side, but until I can get that, I need money.
Supervisor.
Okay, Trustee Miller.
For the residents who are listening and will see this later on, explain what this money is going for COVID expense-wise.
Okay, all right. It's going for everything from masks to spray to face shields to extra people at the door to track. And basically, we now have to control social distancing. We can't have too many people in the building. The CDC wants us to track temperatures. We actually have an app because we do have 150 employees when we're fully employed with part-time. That's just too many people to keep track of what their temperature is in the morning and who filled out and did they have it, are they sick? So we have to maintain all that. There's a lot of record keeping, there's a lot of reporting. It just keeps on going on and on. So
is it for administrative costs? I know some of it's for equipment. What percentage is for administrative costs, extra help that we need to make sure that this gets implemented?
Currently, we are not expensing any costs except for hard costs that are associated with PPE, like mask solution, sneeze shields, things like that. The departments, Parks and Recreation, is eating the people at the front door. HR is eating their own people. It's right now everybody's eating. Every department's pitching in.
Is this also covering deep cleanings, which are expensive?
Right. We have 11,000. You know what? I forgot about the $11,000 that I have in the police department, primarily in deep cleaning. That is a 24-hour operation. It is a tight operation. A tight operation is good to control costs, and which is why we have a pretty frugal police department. But it's a horrible way to run a virus-free area. So you really have to have a lot of cleaning. And I didn't even add in that $11,000. So we're actually at close to 30.
Which is not unusual for a township our size.
No, and there's the last reason why I would like the money, because I want to move everything into one line item. Because we're trying to get grants, and they want justification of what
right.
you spend it on. And it's just too hard going to Parks and Recreation and grabbing a little money there and everybody else. You forget, I agree. Like I just did the cops. Okay.
All right.
Supervisor, don't forget we're gonna need PPE for elections. For the election workers, I'm gonna need masks, shields, gloves, disinfectant.
He gave us a list of what he needed, and it's rather extensive.
Thousands of pens.
They need to do it. I mean, it's all right.
Excuse me. How Clerk Wright, how would, so people going into the curtained area, or there won't be a curtain area, they'll just be out there in the open. Do those people voting have to have masks on?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
we're gonna require, yeah, that's gonna be another issue. We're gonna require, I mean, coming into the building, they're gonna have to wear a mask. Hopefully we can have someone to monitor that. I'm gonna also put the public safety on notice just in case we have any issues. But yeah, that's something that's got to happen. We got to do the 6 foot distances. We got to mark the floors to make sure. Hopefully there won't be any lines, but I'm hoping there won't be any lines. I'm hoping most people take advantage of the application that they receive. I'm thinking that's going to be the buck, but we know we're going to have some people that want to go to the poll and vote. The plan is to we'll have the precincts open, but precinct 6 and 7, because they're in the same building, they can be joined, and precinct 3 and 4 can be combined since they're in the same building. If they're not in the same building, it's a totally different process you have to go through to get them changed and noticing the voters and all that. So we didn't have to. That wasn't recommended. We are getting people to work, so we'll see how that plays out. So far, our people are stepping up, and a lot of the usual ones are not working, but we are getting some participants to step up and say they're willing to work. So we'll see how it goes.
And would we give the voter a mask if they don't have one? The citizen,
Yes. Yes, we will.
Okay.
We'll run the same procedure that we do at Township Hall. If they don't have one, we got to have PPE there to give out. So.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Does anybody have thoughts on this? Other than that, Trustee Bud.
I guess, Kevin, from our conversation earlier in the day, we really want to move 60,000 into the COVID expense. We got a $25,000 grant, and the township said we would put in 10. So we have $35,000 is revenue in the COVID revenue line item, which you'll see on your next financial statement. And we have spent 44,000 so far. So to make sure that there is money to carry us through, we are requesting that the board put 60,000 into that expenditure line item, because as you know, when we started the budget, we didn't have anything. We have to have a budget before we can spend money. So we need to put 60,000 into the COVID expense. And we need to note that there's $35,000 so far in COVID revenue. Not knowing what might come in on any other grant or FEMA, we can let that one ride, but we do need to cover those expenses before we can spend that money. And that will come out of fund balance, since there is no other designated revenue for that at this time.
Do we need to change that motion then?
No, I mentioned.
I don't think we've had a motion yet.
We did.
Motion to add $50,000 to the COVID expense line item.
So the supervisor, it's got to be 60,000.
That's what I just said.
Hold on, you already approved 10,000.
No. The 10,000 was to
separate.
So this 10,000 was to pay and cover expenditures. So the 10,000 goes into revenue out of the fund balance. And we want to reflect that in the expenditures, there'll be 60,000 that covers the 44 and what we might have to pay through the end of the year.
So we'll need to amend that motion.
Yeah. Supervisor, so I make a motion, we amend the original motion to reflect 60,000, an additional $10,000 to the original motion. So the total would be 60,000.
Support.
The COVID.
We have, we'll take that motion. We'll take that one. I withdraw my motion.
Right. We forgot that part.
Through the chair, we also need to recognize the fact that we have $35,000 worth of revenue. So can that be included in that motion, please?
Yes.
Yes, I would include the 35,000 also.
Support.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? I think, okay. I'm only going to spend what we need to spend, so whatever's left over goes back anyway.
Great, yes.
All right. Is there no other questions? And Clerk, could you call the roll?
Okay, Trustee White,
Yes.
Trustee Fraser,
Yes,
Trustee Martin,
Yes.
Trustee Miller,
Yes.
Treasury Bud,
Yes.
yes for me, Supervisor,
Yes.
motion passed.
Thank you. We are now down to public comment for any non-agenda items. Any public comment would be taken since this is such a difficult world.
We do have a hand raised, Supervisor.
Well,
James,
before
we
you-
are gonna, oh, sorry, go ahead, Clerk.
That's okay. Are you going to the public? Let's go to the public first. Go ahead.
Okay, then I'll make
Okay.
sure we work the next.
Okay, we are gonna unmute James. James, will you state your name and address for the record?
Not required, but please.
James, are you there?
Oh,
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, good
Okay.
evening.
Hi, James Foley, Jackson Street, Van Buren Township. I think this is the right part to make this comment on. I wanted to find out at the June 2nd meeting, the German volunteer program was voted down. I don't know what the process is how can that be brought back up again? I mean, I don't know what information was put before the board.
Jim,
Why
Jim,
why
it did,
it voted down.
Jim, it did fail 4-3. The process would be that you would need to have 2 trustees request to have it taken back up again before the board. Then they in writing would ask me to take it back up before the board again.
Okay. I guess that's what I'm looking for then. Is there
Could
2
we-
trustees willing to
Could
bring
do
this
that?
back?
I'd be willing to put that back up, that we support the German volunteer.
Getting it back before this board would not be difficult when there were 3 people that already voted for it. The difficult part.
I just think there might be some information missing. I don't know. I mean, I've done just a little bit of research on, the area where this kid would be coming from. And he's coming from the state of Brandenburg, but he's in the county of Brandmin, which is, I'm guessing it's a fairly small county because the city he's from is similar in size to Van Buren Township. He's from a city of 36,000 people. And his city has had 212 cases with 0 deaths.
Supervisor,
Yes, Trustee White, although we're not supposed to be doing this during negotiation. but-
I know, but I am in approval of a German student volunteer for the senior department, 100%. I think it's a positive, and it would be benefit Van Buren Township to approve the German student volunteer for our senior center.
Like I said, Jim, there's 3 of us that agree, but on the other side of it is without a 4th, it's just gonna run right into a wall.
Well, we might have persuaded somebody else to change their vote. Who
I
knows?
can get it before the board. I wasn't able to get online at the last meeting. I was real busy on the 2nd and I was working. I just want to make sure that I can give you as much information to make your decision. I mean, this Van Buren Township isn't the only place in America doing this. I mean, to my knowledge, I think they have 50 or 60 volunteers accepted for the year of 2020. So I just need to find out what are all these other cities and townships doing as far as, I'm sure they're doing some additional safety measures. I don't believe it's an impossible obstacle to overcome.
Through the chair,
Thank you, Jim, and I appreciate that. I'm sorry. But I think that if we could get 4 votes to let the supervisor move forward with the German volunteer program.
You can't right now. It's not even on the agenda.
I understand it's not on the agenda. But you can set up a special meeting for 2-3 days down the road, supervisor, and let that be the only issue on the meeting. And if we can get 4 votes, then it would be a go.
I will talk to Jim tomorrow and tell him what the problem is. And if he can solve the problem, then we'll do what needs to be done.
Okay.
I'm usually a pretty good problem causer, not a solver.
Yeah, for those that don't know, Jim Foley is a volunteer of the year for the senior center. And he told me when I told him there was no Germans guy, he said, "You better tell those guys that voted no that they're going to be calling bingos on Thursday night."
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of stuff this kid does, over the years. I've volunteered at the senior center now since I think it was May or June of 2007. I was laid off from Ford and had the opportunity through the job bank to come to the township and volunteer where I lived, and everyone was in support of it. And I've just been stuck there now. They won't let me go anywhere else.
Yeah, you can give me a call tomorrow. Unless there's a 4th vote, I really do not want to take the board. We've gone back and forth on this so many times over the last 2 months. But Jim, I will talk to you tomorrow. I promise I will give you whatever you need to try and make this move forward.
Supervisor, I just like to say to my fellow board members, having a German volunteer here shows what a diverse community we have and how we're reaching out to a different culture. And I think it's really a plus for our township to have the German volunteer here. I don't see what we have to lose by having them. And I just don't understand why it's not a unanimous vote.
Out of politeness, it was already discussed, and I really want to end this thing now. Jim can call me tomorrow, and I will talk to you, Jim. I really will, but I really can't let this become a topic of discussion.
Right. Well, can we get it on the next agenda?
You're gonna have you can get it on the next agenda if you have 2 people backing you, and as you can hear, you've already got 2 people that'll back you. Do
we need a motion to do that, or what do we got to?
If 2 trustees come before me with a question, I must put it on the agenda.
Okay.
Before we sign off on this, Supervisor, I'd like to hear what Sherry Budd was going to say.
Yeah.
Nothing. My thing is, there isn't anybody that doesn't want the German program to continue. What we said at the last meeting when we turned it down, we said we would review it again when we brought up the budget in October. The thing is, the border isn't even open yet, so he can't even fly here as such. When he flies here, he's going to have to be quarantined for 14 days. We have seniors that hardly will go out of their house because they're so afraid. I just think in the times we're at right now, and we don't know where this virus is going because it keeps popping up and popping up again. It's just one last thing. I don't want him harmed. I don't want him hurt. If he got here and got the disease, he couldn't fly back home. There again, he's our responsibility. I have supported these kids ever since they came in from day one, but I think this is a year we just need to lay off and look at it again for next year, and I wouldn't have any problem with it.
I just like to say, I don't think that we can live and not do things because what might happen. I think that it's a fine program as long as we keep safety issues in the forefront. We're all at risk, every one of us. There's nothing saying that we can't get it. I'm for bringing them over.
Debate issues we're supposed to allow comment without debate. I have really gone overboard on this.
Okay.
Really should be kidding myself. Jim, thank you. I will get back with you tomorrow. I promise. Okay.
All right. I did have another thing. I tried to.
All right. What?
Make a discussion when the Parks and Rec thing was going on or make a comment.
Okay.
I was just wondering why the Haggerty sub park wouldn't be opened with the same criteria of, we're not sanitizing the equipment. Make sure you sanitize yourself.
Because it's almost impossible to social distance inside the Haggerty sub park because it's so small. So it's hard to get in there and clean it. It's hard to maintain it. It's hard to supervise it, and it's almost impossible to social distance it. Now, is there going to be a lock on that gate on that park? No. I mean, there is no lock for them. So there's not going to be locked.
I think they do lock it, but I'm not sure. Anyway, I just happened to, when I heard the director mention that, I live right down the street from it. I don't go there very often, but I'm sure some people do.
Very, very few believe, we understand from what we've been told. Okay. All right. So do we have anybody else that wishes to speak? Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Supervisor, not that I can tell. There's no more hands raised for public comment.
Oh, all right. All right. Clerk, right? You had something you want to talk about.
Yeah, I want to bring forth to the board. I just want to have the board think about something that was brought up to me in regards to some of the directives we have and some of the issues that we have. Due to a couple of directors that have some concerns with their health in regarding this time, this COVID-19 issue, and we should give some consideration to allowing them to be able to do some of their work from home if they can.
Our directors, your director, Joanne?
Our directors, the directors of the township.
So let's start with Joanne then. I mean, I'm not discussing this here in an open format.
No, I just said we need to give some of the consideration. I'm not saying Joanne. Joanne's not a director, but I'm just saying we have some that have brought some concern in being able to do some work from home if they can, and something we need to think about.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything they want to talk about?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Support.
Support. Okay. All in favor? Oh.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. All right. Thank you very much. I will see you guys in a couple weeks. Bye.
Everyone.
Bye.
Bye.